Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks, not since her golden retriever Max began his eerie nightly howling. It wasn't just the sound that unsettled her, it was the precision. Every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., Max would stand rigidly in her bedroom doorway and let out a sound so raw, so sorrowful. It felt more like a spiritual distress signal than a dog's whimper. At first, Sarah chalked it up to stress, maybe a reaction to his aging body. But deep down, something didn't add up. Her skepticism began to crumble the day she discovered an old metal filing cabinet buried in her grandfather's attic. Among the cobwebs and decaying papers, she found a yellowed stack of documents, transcripts of prophecies made by Edgar Cayce, the man once known as the Sleeping Prophet. Sarah wasn't spiritual, she was a scientist. But something about the words grabbed her in a way scientific literature never had. Faithful companions will become the guardians of the unseen. They will speak through anguish and alert the pure of heart. She put the paper down. Max, as if on cue, let out another one of his midnight cries. It was 3:17 a.m. again. What haunted Sarah wasn't the question of whether Max was in pain, but whether he was trying to warn her. Cayce's writings went further than metaphor. In a trance in 1944, he spoke of a time when dogs would howl not out of fear or pain, but because they could detect vibrations imperceptible to humans. Frequencies of catastrophe, emotional tremors from a world beyond ours. Sarah began to wonder, what if Max wasn't losing his mind? What if he was ahead of ours? Her research instincts kicked in. She installed sensors in Max's favorite sleeping spots, electromagnetic field detectors, atmospheric pressure gauges, seismic monitors. Nothing unusual for 3 nights. But on the 4th night, right at 3:15 a.m., 2 minutes before Max's ritual howl, the machines spiked wildly. The EMF readings fluctuated beyond baseline, seismic monitors registered microtremors, and air pressure dropped by precisely 0.3 millibars. Max wasn't reacting to shadows. He was responding to something real, something measurable, but still beyond our comprehension. And every night after that, the phenomena intensified. Sarah's lab filled with charts, maps, anomaly logs, and anxiety. Whatever was happening wasn't random. It was escalating. What had started as an effort to calm her own dog turned into something much bigger. A crack in the wall between known and unknown. The canine behaviors Cayce predicted weren't metaphorical. They were observable, recordable, repeatable. Max was acting as a living instrument, a biological warning system attuned to an approaching reality science had no framework for. Sarah's research was meant to be private, but the data was too compelling, the implications too urgent. She posted her preliminary findings online. Within hours, the floodgates opened. Emails poured in from around the globe. A Kansas farmer described his border collie howling at an empty cornfield every night, always at the same time. A family in Tokyo uploaded videos of their usually docile Shiba Inu pacing and scratching at windows as if something outside was calling to him. An elderly widow in Scotland wrote of her terrier growling at the earth 3 days before a 4.8 magnitude quake. Then came the veterinarians. Dr. Marcus Webb from Atlanta sent data showing a staggering 340% increase in canine behavioral anomalies. Dogs refusing to eat familiar food, abandoning cherished toys, growling at empty doorways, hiding under beds, trembling at nothing. And all these cases started appearing around the same time, 6 months ago. Sarah's stomach twisted. These weren't isolated behaviors. This was a synchronized global phenomenon. Even more chilling, when Sarah charted the locations of these incidents using their GPS coordinates, a pattern began to emerge. Not random scatter, but a geometry, a shape, something forming beneath the noise, too consistent to be dismissed as coincidence. Edgar Cayce had said, "Only those who listen to the four-legged prophets will survive what is coming." Sarah realized she might be listening, but would she understand? Before it was too late. Something was behind this global awakening, and it was gaining momentum. Sarah's investigation brought her to Dr. James Whitmore, a geologist with a quiet reputation for tracking tectonic anomalies. For years, Whitmore had observed fault lines activating in sequences that traditional models couldn't explain. But when Sarah layered Max's behavioral patterns onto Whitmore's seismic data, the overlap revealed something astonishing. The dogs weren't just foreseeing earthquakes. They were reacting to a deeper, older rhythm resonating from the planet itself. Whitmore's data pointed to an unprecedented era of geological instability, one Earth hadn't experienced in over 12,000 years. The magnetic poles were shifting at record speeds. Pressure beneath the crust was building toward what could only be described as a planetary adjustment. Dogs, with their acute sensitivity to electromagnetic fields and subsonic waves, were among the first to register Earth's distress signals. Somehow, Edgar Cayce had predicted this moment, what he called the Great Change. As Sarah and Whitmore compared notes, they began to understand. This wasn't just about natural disasters. Something was fundamentally shifting in the Earth's energy, and dogs were trying to warn humanity before it was too late. The turning point came when Sarah isolated the frequency that triggered Max's nightly response. Using precision audio equipment, she identified a subsonic signal at exactly 7.3 hertz, matching the Earth's Schumann resonance, often referred to as the planet's heartbeat. But this signal was unstable, erratic, at times dipping dangerously low, then surging beyond normal bounds. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist specialized in electromagnetic anomalies, joined Sarah's team. Together, they confirmed that Earth's magnetic field wasn't just fluctuating, it was rapidly deteriorating. The dogs responded to these shifts because their nervous systems were naturally attuned to the planet's core frequencies. Cayce's visions weren't symbolic anymore. They were measurable phenomena. But it wasn't just the fluctuations that alarmed the scientists. It was their source. Deep Earth samples revealed massive disruptions within the planet's molten layers. These tremors weren't detectable to humans, but the dogs sensed them. Their instincts, sharpened over millennia, picked up on the danger. They were our biological alarm system, and they were screaming. The more Sarah researched, the more she realized dogs weren't merely reacting as individuals. They were functioning as nodes in a psychic web connected across continents. Each canine was part of a massive planetary intelligence network, processing data and relaying warnings faster than any human system could. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, an expert in animal cognition, brought neural scans showing synchronized brain activity in dogs across the globe. They weren't mimicking each other. They were communicating. This wasn't imagination. It was telepathy, operating at a frequency humanity had never tapped into. Cayce had written of such a time, when animals would unite across valleys and oceans to deliver one collective message. And now, it was happening. These creatures weren't just reacting, they were organizing, forming a living intelligence grid, monitoring the Earth's health in real time. But as the situation worsened, the network's strength grew. More dogs joined the fold daily, drawn into this silent collective. Sarah understood now. She wasn't just studying behavior. She was witnessing the formation of a consciousness larger than any species. The question that haunted her: would this global mind survive long enough to sound the full alarm, or collapse under the weight of the catastrophe it was born to warn us about? 3 months into her research, the unthinkable happened. Max collapsed during one of his nightly vigils. A veterinary evaluation brought an unsettling truth. Max's brain wasn't damaged. It was overloaded. His neural pathways were firing at rates far beyond normal canine processing, as if his mind was absorbing information beyond natural limits. Max wasn't ill. He was overwhelmed, and he wasn't alone. Reports from animal hospitals worldwide echoed the same strange findings. Dogs collapsing from neural hyperactivity, drained by the weight of unseen data flooding their senses. Sarah began to wonder, were these animals being awakened in the same way Edgar Cayce once accessed visions in his trance states? The Earth's energetic disturbances weren't just disrupting behavior. They were triggering dormant psychic abilities in creatures still harmonized with the planet's ancient rhythms. But this awakening came at a heartbreaking cost. The dogs were giving everything, sometimes their lives, to be our messengers. As Sarah held Max's weakening body, she realized she was witnessing one of the most profound acts of loyalty in recorded history. These beings were literally dying to warn us. The psychic network, once so vibrant, was collapsing under the strain. Humanity's window to listen was shrinking. Then came the breakthrough. Using complex algorithms and frequency tracking, Sarah finally cracked the pattern hidden within the dog's behaviors. The howls, the pacing, the panic. It wasn't chaos, it was language, a multi-layered, frequency-based communication. And the message? Listen, change, survive. But it wasn't just those words. Embedded within the behavioral patterns were coordinates, timelines, and predictive models. The dogs were showing us not only that something was coming, but where, when, and how we might survive it. Dr. Vasquez's resonance mapping revealed multiple layers of signal. Some were designed for human interpretation now. Others were stored within harmonics that would only make sense later, when the world was ready to receive them. Edgar Cayce once said, "The faithful speak for all the tomorrows yet to come." And now, it was clear, the dogs weren't just warning us about catastrophe. They were guiding us into a new era. Sarah looked at Max and understood. These animals weren't just warning beacons. They were living archives, psychic libraries of survival data, transmitting not with words, but with the deepest loyalty. And then came the revelation that redefined everything. Through the lens of quantum field theory and consciousness studies, Sarah's team discovered that the dogs weren't just sensing change. They were in communion with something more, the Earth's own consciousness. Unlike humans, dogs never lost touch with the subtle frequencies that bind life to the planet. Their minds remained open, unfettered by the ego-driven barriers of civilization. Cayce had predicted this too. Earth was alive, and it was speaking, not through earthquakes or storms, but through its most devoted companions. Max stirred in Sarah's arms, and for a moment their eyes locked. It was more than connection, it was knowing. He had always known. In that moment, Sarah felt something shift inside her, an overwhelming clarity that she had been chosen to serve as humanity's voice in the most important dialogue ever held between species. The Earth itself, through its most loyal creatures, was reaching out one final time before the coming shift unfolded. As the decoded message circulated through global scientific circles, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Governments pushed to militarize the discovery. Corporations saw avenues for control and profit. Religious institutions tried to claim it as divine validation. Meanwhile, the dogs continued to fall, exhausted, depleted, yet unwilling to abandon their duty. Their sacrifice was the only thing sustaining the fragile line of communication between humanity and the planetary consciousness. Then, Sarah remembered a line in Edgar Cayce's writings she had initially dismissed. "Only those who listen to the four-legged prophets will survive what is coming." Now she saw its deeper meaning. Survival was not just about escaping disaster. It meant evolving, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. It meant accepting that human intelligence wasn't the only form of wisdom on Earth. The dogs were offering humanity a sacred invitation, a chance to restore balance, to heal the deep rupture between human will and planetary life. But this invitation required more than just data. It demanded humility. It called for trust. It asked humanity to believe in something beyond its instruments and algorithms. Sarah began meditating with Max, opening herself to the frequencies he had always felt. For the first time, she experienced something beyond words, an ancient, boundless presence gently pressing against her awareness, a desperate love, a final plea. The Earth was suffering, but it was still willing to reach out, to forgive, to guide. 6 months after that first howl at 3:17 a.m., Sarah stood before the United Nations. Behind her, live data from thousands of dogs around the world danced across massive screens, forming a moving tapestry of consciousness. She spoke not just as a scientist, but as an emissary of a deeper intelligence that had waited far too long to be heard. Cayce's prophecy had manifested, not through apocalypse, but through reconnection. Dogs had not simply warned humanity. They had carried its last hope. Their howls had been the first notes of a forgotten symphony, one that could now be rewritten in harmony. Max lay calmly by her side, eyes reflecting a peace that needed no words. His mission, and the mission of all like him, was complete. The future of Earth would no longer be decided in labs or boardrooms alone. It would begin in the quiet communion between species, in the stillness where hearts listened instead of dominating. The dogs had done their part. Now it was humanity's turn.